What's different about those really mature deer versus the younger ones, like habitat wise? Like, are they typically more like secluded, like run on their own? Like how do you key in on them versus like all I'm seeing is young deer? I want to see these more mature ones. What do I need to do different? And how does my camera strategy need to shift?
I see both sides of this, where sometimes you'll see mature deer still hanging out with younger deer, and I feel that they'll use them almost as like a test deer. Like, hey, you go first. I'm gonna hang back and see what's going on. I'm gonna assess the situation while you go out there. You know, you expose yourself. If you're not alarmed by anything, then I'll come out. Then the other side is these mature deer. They're by themselves.
Right.
It's very seldomly you'll find them traveling with other deer. And I have found Eastern North Carolina, I try to get into the spots no one wants to go to, the spots that are wet, the spots that are thick, and the spots that have really hard, solid transitions.
And when we talk hard, solid transitions, give me an example.
You got a thick pine row or a recently, we'll say a clear cut area.
That's real grown up.
It's grown up. It's thick. Like you got to basically, there's areas where I'm, belly crawling through these areas to get to the open part of the transition, because they're probably, I would say, they're bedding really close to that transition line. They got the thick cover to their back, but then they can see that open area of the transition where it opens up into whatever that transition is. So trying to focus in on those areas, because a deer bedding, I feel a mature buck, they're gonna play it just like we would. They're gonna play things to their advantage. They're gonna play the wind, but they also want to use their eyes. So they're not bunched up, in the middle of the thickest of the thick where they can't see, 10 yards in front of them. They still want to use their sight, to help them, as far as predators go.
So do you think that you're going to have to push past those younger deer and like sometimes bump them out in order to get to the mature deer?
I think so.
And and I'm talking like trail cam strategy with this. Like you realize you're going to have to go a little bit further and push in a little bit more and put those cameras in more remote areas.
I do. And that's where your entry and exit points are going to be important.
Well, which was what seems so hard, right? That's the hard part is how do you access?
That's where I'll use Onyx, and it has the track mode. So as soon as before I go into we'll say this thick stuff, I'll hit track, start tracking my whatever path I'm going, and I'll have my veg clippers, a saw, whatever it is, and I'm just slowly walking through there, clipping branches, making my path, so it's an easier infill and exfil route for when I go back in there to actually hunt it. But you have to push in, and this is me. I guess I'm more aggressive than most people, but I push into the thick stuff. I don't care if I bump deer. If you bump them once, you can get away with it. Now, if you continue to bump them, they're going to leave.
When we talk about bumping, we're talking about you're utilizing the wind in your favor to get back to these areas, right? The wind's not blowing over you as best you can.
Yeah, because there's time I don't know if there's a deer that's downwind of me.
Right.
I don't know exactly where these deer are bedding. I don't think anyone can tell you that deer's right there.
Yeah. Nope.
So there's times when you have to push in, or I push into these areas, whether it's to deploy a camera or to actually hunt, like you have to push into that stuff.
So you got, I mean, essentially you got to risk it for the biscuit.
That's my approach. I'm not saying it's the right approach.
I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach this personally, but I think you can also, there's a lot to learn from guys who consistently kill good deer every year. And you being one of them. I mean, not just good deer, but good animals every year. You've got a lot of experience with it. So when it comes to is there a difference in actual, I would say, sign for your mature deer versus your younger, 1, 2 and a half year old bucks versus your, 3.5 to 4? Is there a big difference in sign that you can key in on, or is it something you've got to, all right, I'm going to deploy here, deploy camera here, I'm going to watch the sign? Nope. It's just it's a young buck. I need to shift. We need a different approach to find that mature one.
I think that's a tough question, one, because I've witnessed, very mature deer rubbing on saplings.
Really?
And
okay.
I've witnessed, very immature deer rubbing on larger trees. So I don't look at a rub unless it's just a ginormous tree. I'm like, okay, that has to be a big deer. But what I'll try to do is, we'll say if there's a sapling here, there's one over here. I'm trying to see how much of these trees to the left and right of that main rub are tore up. To me, that's the big indicator of, okay, that's a bigger deer. That's a mature deer.
So say that again.
So we'll say if this is the main tree right here,
yep,
and you have, some other saplings here and here, we'll say.
So the main tree is going to be the bigger tree we're talking about?
We'll say if it's the big tree or a small tree.
Okay.
Size really doesn't matter. But then if you have a tree here and a tree here, and we'll say it's 6-7 inches to the right, 6-7 inches to the left, this one's rubbed hard. These ones are tore up a little bit as well. So it's telling me, this deer's a little bit wider. His tines are probably a little bit longer because it's hitting these, peripheral trees here. So that's one indicator that I can say to find, hey, maybe I got a mature deer in here. But just solely going off scrapes and going off of a single rub, I think is very difficult. Now you can look at the tracks in the scrapes, tracks on the, trails wherever you're on. A bigger track's going to indicate a more mature deer. But yeah, I think it's tough to read sign and be like, that's a big deer.
So you've got to take, so realistically, you've got to take a lot of different factors into account in order to look at it. So you're looking at one, terrain. I'm assuming you're looking at two, the features of the terrain that are around you.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at the sign. And then realistically, you need to get eyes on with a camera or visually with an observation sit in order to know what you're after.
Yeah. And we'll say it's on a hard scrape line or hard rub line. I'm not putting that camera, I'm trying to get it offset.
Right.
I don't want the animal, the deer, to see, I'm coming here to rub this tree or to hit this scrape, and all of a sudden there's a camera right here. Like, I'm trying to offset it. Like I said, trying to make it hidden.
Yep.
The best that you can.